This is the complete story of Dispatch, including every episode and the major endings. The story begins with an idea found in many superhero stories. In most superhero stories, the person behind the mask is told that the suit does not make the hero. It is an inspiring idea, although it is much easier to believe when the person saying it can fly, lift a car, or survive a bullet. Robert Robertson III has none of those advantages. He was not born with super strength, and he cannot turn invisible, summon fire, bend metal, or move faster than the human eye can follow. Everything that made Robert appear extraordinary came from a machine. The Mecha Man armor was a family inheritance, passed from his grandfather to his father, and finally to him. It carried generations of engineering pride and unfinished grief. For most of Robert's life, being Mecha Man was not simply a profession. It was the answer to every question he had about himself. Whenever Robert wondered who he was supposed to become, how he would honor his family, or how he would avenge his father, the answer was always the same. He would become Mecha Man. Then, in a single night, the armor was destroyed. Dispatch begins where many superhero stories would normally end. The villain survives, the hero loses. The symbol is broken, and the money is gone. The man inside the machine is left with no idea what remains. What follows is not simply the story of Robert repairing a suit. It is the story of Robert learning how to become useful without it. Across 8 episodes, he takes a job at the Superhero Dispatch Network, manages a team of former villains, navigates office politics, forms complicated relationships, and discovers that leadership can be more dangerous than direct combat. Every choice made by the player influences how Robert treats the people around him, how much they trust him, and whether one of the most unstable members of his team ultimately becomes a hero or returns to villainy. This is the complete story of Dispatch, covering all 8 episodes, the major choices, the possible romances, and the endings that can reshape the future of the Z-Team. Naturally, this video contains full spoilers. The first episode is called Pivot. Robert Robertson is introduced as a man who has spent years chasing a single target. That target is Shroud. Shroud is not merely another criminal in a city filled with costumed villains. He is the man responsible for the death of Robert's father. Every confrontation with him is therefore personal, and every lead feels like another step towards settling a debt that has defined Robert's adult life. At the beginning of the story, Robert is still operating as Mecha Man. The armor is old, powerful, expensive, and increasingly difficult to maintain. It was never designed to be replaced easily. Its systems depend on technology that Robert can repair only by draining more of his remaining money into the project. Even so, he continues. The pursuit takes him into a trap prepared by Shroud and the Red Ring, the criminal organization operating under his command. Robert fights through the ambush, but the true objective was never to defeat him in open combat. Someone manages to plant an explosive device on the Mecha Man armor. Robert escapes with his life, but the suit does not survive. The explosion leaves the armor catastrophically damaged. Its structure can potentially be rebuilt, but its most important component is missing. Without the Astral Pulse, the unique power source at the center of the Mecha Man system, the machine is nothing more than an extremely expensive shell. Robert has lost his weapon, his career, and the one identity that made him feel connected to his father. He publicly announces his retirement, but retirement does not solve anything. His debts remain, his anger remains. His need to prove that he is still capable remains. Soon afterward, Robert witnesses a robbery and attempts to intervene without the armor. It is a small but important scene because it exposes the difference between courage and capability. Robert is still willing to act. He simply no longer has the protection or power that once made his actions effective. This is when Mandy, better known as Blonde Blazer, enters his life. Blonde Blazer is one of the most visible heroes associated with the Superhero Dispatch Network. She is confident, powerful, polished, and deeply familiar with the corporate structure surrounding modern hero work. Her abilities come from an amulet that grants her flight, strength, energy projection, and resilience. She offers Robert a way forward. The Superhero Dispatch Network needs someone who understands hero work from the inside. In exchange for taking a position as a dispatcher at the Torrance branch, Robert will gain access to SDN resources and technical support that may help him rebuild the Mecha Man armor. For Robert, it is not the comeback he imagined. A dispatcher does not stand in front of cameras. A dispatcher sits behind a desk, watches emergencies appear on a map, and decides who else should receive the glory. But the alternative is to remain powerless and buried in debt. Robert accepts. The episode establishes the central conflict of the entire season. Robert believes the dispatch job is temporary. He sees it as a bridge back to the suit, back to Shroud, and back to the life that was taken from him. The audience can already see the possibility that this new role may become something more. Robert cannot see it yet. The second episode is called Onboard. Robert's first day at the Superhero Dispatch Network introduces him to a completely different version of heroism. SDN is not a secret headquarters hidden beneath a mansion. It is a workplace. It has managers, performance metrics, outdated equipment, uncomfortable meetings, rival departments, and employees who are far more concerned with surviving the day than maintaining a perfect public image. Robert also reunites with Chase, formerly known as Track Star. Chase once possessed super speed. The power made him extraordinary, but it also came with a terrible cost. His body aged far more quickly than it should have. Although he is much younger than he appears, his years as a speedster have left him looking like an elderly man. Chase serves as a warning for Robert. A heroic identity can consume the person carrying it. Powers and symbols are not free. Every time a hero gives something to the role, there is a possibility that the role will take more than it returns. Robert is then introduced to the team he will be managing. The Z-Team is part of the Phoenix program, an SDN initiative designed to reform former supervillains by giving them supervised work as heroes. On paper, the concept is admirable. In practice, Robert receives a group of difficult personalities who do not respect him, do not trust each other, and do not necessarily believe they can become better people. Among them is Invisigal, whose real name is Courtney. Her ability allows her to become invisible while holding her breath. The limitation is significant, especially because she suffers from asthma. Her power is therefore tied to discomfort, control, and panic. To disappear, she must deprive herself of air. Invisigal is rebellious, defensive, impulsive, and openly hostile toward Robert. She immediately recognizes that he has no powers and no experience managing a team like this. Robert, in turn, sees her as irresponsible and difficult. Their conflict becomes one of the emotional foundations of the season. The rest of the Z-Team includes former criminals with abilities and personalities that frequently create as many problems as they solve. They joke, argue, ignore procedure, compete for attention, and treat the dispatch system as an inconvenience. Robert's gameplay responsibilities begin here. Calls appear across Los Angeles, each requiring different combinations of abilities. Some emergencies need strength. Others need speed, intelligence, stealth, mobility, or social skill. Sending the wrong hero can lead to failure. Sending the right hero at the wrong time can leave the team unavailable for a more serious crisis. The system forces Robert to learn his team as people and as resources. This distinction matters. A poor manager sees only numbers. A careless friend sees only personalities. Robert must become both supportive and practical. He needs to understand what each person can do when they need help, and when trusting them creates an unacceptable risk. The first shifts are chaotic. The Z-Team performs inconsistently, and Robert struggles to establish authority. Invisigal creates the most serious problem when she disobeys an order and allows a villain to escape. The incident confirms every negative assumption Robert has made about her. It also reveals why the Phoenix program is so difficult. The people inside it are being asked to act like heroes before they fully believe they deserve the title. After the shift, Blonde Blazer tells Robert that the team's performance is not acceptable. Someone must be removed. The decision is not presented as a punishment based only on numbers. It is intended to send a message. Robert must demonstrate that the rules have consequences, even though he has barely had enough time to understand the people whose futures he now controls. This leads directly into the next episode. The third episode is called Turnover. The third episode places Robert in one of the most uncomfortable positions a new leader can face. He must fire someone. The choice comes down primarily to Sonar or Coupe. Both are members of the Z team. Both have strengths, weaknesses, relationships, and reasons for wanting to remain in the Phoenix program. Neither can be reduced to a simple statistic, even though SDN's performance systems encourage Robert to think in exactly those terms. The decision tests what kind of manager the player wants Robert to become. He can focus on efficiency, prioritize loyalty, judge behavior, potential, or personal connection, and also allow frustration to influence him. Whatever the reason, one person loses access to the program. This matters far beyond the office. For a former villain, removal from the Phoenix program is not the same as losing an ordinary job. The program represents a path toward legitimacy. It offers structure, protection, and the possibility of proving that a criminal past does not have to control the future. Being cut can therefore feel like more than rejection. It can feel like confirmation. The rejected team member may believe that reform was never real, that SDN never trusted them, and that Robert was simply another authority figure waiting for an excuse to discard them. At the same time, Robert cannot avoid the responsibility by pretending everyone is performing well. Leadership without consequences would leave the entire team vulnerable. Throughout the episode, Robert continues managing emergencies while tension spreads across the office. Every success and failure becomes connected to the approaching decision. The team knows someone is leaving. That knowledge changes how they behave. Some try harder. Some become defensive. Some hide fear behind jokes. Invisigal remains near the center of the conflict. Her performance has made her an obvious target, yet the formal choice falls elsewhere. This creates a complicated dynamic. She can interpret Robert's decisions as proof that he sees something worth saving in her, or she can continue assuming that his support is temporary. The episode also develops Robert's relationship with Blonde Blazer. She is his manager, the person who recruited him, and one of the few people with enough authority to make the reconstruction of the Mecha Man suit possible. Her confidence can appear effortless, but the deeper story shows that she is also balancing corporate expectations, public responsibility, and personal disappointment. Robert can begin moving closer to her romantically, though that connection is complicated by professional boundaries and by her history with Phenomenon. By the end of the episode, Robert makes the cut. Sonar or Coupe leaves the team. The office is quieter afterward, but not calmer. The Z team has learned that Robert's decisions are real. Robert has learned that authority does not feel heroic when the person being hurt is standing directly in front of him. Most importantly, the person he removes will remember the choice. That consequence returns later. The fourth episode is called Restructure. After removing one member of the Z team, Robert must choose a replacement. The two major candidates represent completely different ideas about what the team needs. Waterboy is an SDN janitor who wants an opportunity to become something more. He lacks the reputation of a major hero, but he understands what it means to be overlooked. Bringing him into the Z team reinforces the idea that potential can exist in people the system has already decided not to notice. The other option is Phenomenon. Phenomenon is a famous and powerful hero. He also happens to be Blonde Blazer's former boyfriend. His presence adds immediate strength to the team, but it also creates personal and professional complications. He represents the traditional superhero ideal that Robert once understood: powerful, visible, celebrated, and already accepted. Choosing between them is not only about statistics, it is about the identity of the Z team. Does the team need an established hero who can carry difficult missions, or another outsider who understands the humiliation of being underestimated? The replacement changes how certain dispatch scenarios unfold, but the emotional core of the episode is Robert's growing connection to the people around him. His relationship with Invisigal becomes more complicated. Behind the aggression, she wants Robert's approval. She may insult him, challenge him, and reject his authority, but his opinion increasingly matters to her. She is used to people expecting the worst. When Robert offers patience, it creates a vulnerability she does not know how to manage. Depending on the player's choices, romantic tension begins to develop. At the same time, Robert can continue growing closer to Blonde Blazer. She offers a different kind of connection. With Mandy, Robert sees maturity, competence, and stability. With Invisigal, he sees chaos, honesty, and the possibility of helping someone change. Neither route is simply good or bad. Both reflect a different version of Robert. A relationship with Blonde Blazer connects him to the professional world he is entering. A relationship with Invisigal connects him more deeply to the redemption project at the heart of the Z team. The episode also reinforces the importance of Robert's choices during dispatch work. Team success is not separate from the narrative. Good decisions improve trust and prove that Robert is becoming capable in his new role. Poor decisions create resentment and weaken the idea that he understands the people under his command. By the end of Restructure, the Z team has changed. One person is gone. Another has arrived. Robert is no longer simply observing the team he inherited. He is actively shaping it. The 5th episode is called Team Spirit. The 5th episode allows the characters to spend time together, away from the dispatch floor. After a difficult day, members of the Z team gather at a bar associated with the villain community. The location matters because it belongs to the world they came from, not the heroic institution they are trying to enter. Inside SDN, the former villains are expected to behave like employees. At the bar, they are surrounded by people who remember who they used to be. The episode creates space for conversations that cannot happen during an emergency. The team jokes, drinks, argues, and exposes pieces of themselves that professional performance reviews could never reveal. Robert enters this environment as an outsider. He is the dispatcher, the manager, the powerless man who once wore one of the city's most recognizable suits. He is also someone who has begun earning the team's respect. This is where the central question of the Phoenix program becomes personal. Can someone become a hero simply by doing heroic work? Or does the world continue to see the villain forever? For the Z team, redemption is not a single decision. It is a repeated act performed in front of people who may never believe it is sincere. The episode deepens Robert's bond with the group. He sees that their dysfunction is not random. Many of them learn to survive through aggression, performance, or distrust. Their worst habits once protected them. Now, those same habits prevent them from working together. Invisigal's attraction to Robert becomes increasingly difficult for her to hide. Her behavior can move between genuine vulnerability and immediate retreat. She wants connection, but connection gives another person the power to reject her. Blonde Blazer's relationship with Robert also develops, depending on earlier choices. Her interest is more controlled, but no less meaningful. She sees that Robert is becoming effective without the suit, perhaps before he is ready to admit it himself. The player may be asked to make choices that strengthen one relationship while distancing the other. These choices influence later scenes, but the larger purpose of the episode is to transform the Z team from a collection of employees into something closer to a community. They are not fully united. They are not fully reformed, but for the first time, they begin to behave like people who might actually care whether the others survive. That change becomes essential when the story returns to the Astral Pulse. The 6th episode is called Moving Parts. Robert and SDN technical specialist Royd continue working on the Mecha Man armor. The suit can be repaired structurally. Systems can be replaced. Damaged components can be rebuilt. But the central problem remains the same. The Astral Pulse is missing. Without it, the armor cannot truly return. The Astral Pulse is more than a battery. It is the heart of the Mecha Man legacy, an irreplaceable energy source tied to Robert's family history and to the power that made the armor extraordinary. The search eventually produces a lead. Blonde Blazer, Invisigal, Royd, and Robert become involved in planning how to retrieve it. The mission immediately exposes the differences between them. Blonde Blazer approaches the problem like a professional hero and manager. She wants control, preparation, and coordination. Invisigal is impatient. She sees hesitation as another sign that no one trusts her. The conflict becomes worse when Chase confronts Invisigal about her criminal past. Chase has reasons to be suspicious. He has watched heroes sacrifice years of their lives, while villains create damage and then ask for forgiveness. To him, redemption cannot erase consequences, but his judgment hits Invisigal at exactly the wrong moment. She leaves to recover the Astral Pulse alone. This decision is reckless, but it is not meaningless. Invisigal wants to prove that she is useful. She wants to show Robert that he was not wrong to defend her. She also wants control over a situation in which everyone else is discussing her reliability as though she is not present. Robert helps guide her remotely. The sequence connects the dispatch mechanic directly to the emotional story. Robert cannot physically accompany her. He must observe, communicate, and trust. He must use the skills he has developed behind the desk. Invisigal moves through Red Ring territory, using invisibility and improvisation to avoid detection. Her asthma makes prolonged invisibility dangerous. Every moment she disappears carries a physical cost. She reaches the Astral Pulse. Then Shroud appears. The mission collapses. Shroud seemingly takes the power source and incapacitates Invisigal. Chase uses his speed to rescue her, pushing his damaged body beyond safe limits. He succeeds. Then he collapses. The moment changes the team. Chase, who had criticized Invisigal, nearly destroys himself to save her. His action proves that moral judgment and heroic instinct can exist in the same person. He may not trust her, but he will not allow her to die. For Invisigal, the rescue produces guilt rather than relief. Her need to prove herself has placed someone else in the hospital. The search for the Astral Pulse has failed. The Mecha Man suit remains incomplete, and the Z-Team is forced to decide whether Invisigal has become too dangerous to keep. The 7th episode is called Retrospect. With Chase hospitalized, the Z-Team turns against Invisigal. From their perspective, the evidence is overwhelming. She ignored the plan, entered enemy territory alone, lost the Astral Pulse, and caused Chase to risk his life. The team votes on whether she should remain. This is one of the season's most important moments because Robert must decide whether redemption includes surviving a serious failure. It is easy to support someone when improvement is visible. It is much harder when that person repeats the same destructive behavior everyone feared from the beginning. Invisigal's situation becomes worse when she finally tells Robert the truth. She was responsible for the bomb that destroyed the Mecha Man armor. Before joining the Phoenix program, she worked with Shroud and the Red Ring. She planted the explosive that ended Robert's career. This revelation reframes their entire relationship. Robert did not merely spend weeks managing a difficult former villain. He spent weeks helping the person who took his life apart. Every moment of trust now appears contaminated. Every sign of affection can be interpreted as manipulation. Every defense Robert offered can feel like a humiliation. Invisigal insists that her feelings and her attempt to change are real. Robert must decide what that truth means. Forgiveness is not the same as pretending the damage never happened. Trust is not the same as certainty. The player can continue supporting Invisigal or reject her. This choice contributes to the hidden system that determines her final path. The game does not judge only one dialogue option. It evaluates a pattern: how Robert treated her, how well he performed as a dispatcher, whether he encouraged better decisions, and whether he demonstrated faith without removing accountability all influence the result. Meanwhile, Robert's earlier decision to cut Sonar or Coupe returns. The rejected team member becomes involved with Shroud and helps capture Robert. Their betrayal is not inevitable in a moral sense, but it is a direct consequence of a person feeling discarded by the system that promised reform. Robert is taken to Shroud. Shroud reveals another twist. Invisigal did not deliver the Astral Pulse to him. She hid it. This means her mission was not a complete betrayal. Even after her past was exposed, she made a decision that prevented Shroud from gaining the power source. Shroud tortures Robert in an attempt to discover where it is. Robert cannot give him the answer because he does not know. The scene strips away the remaining fantasy that Robert's conflict with Shroud can be solved through one clean act of revenge. Robert is powerless, injured, and forced to confront the possibility that the person he hates has controlled the direction of his life for years. Blonde Blazer rescues him. The rescue demonstrates how far Robert's world has changed. He once believed he would return to battle through his own repaired armor. Instead, he survives because of the relationships built during his time at SDN. There is no time to recover. The Red Ring begins a coordinated assault across Los Angeles. The 8th and final episode is called Synergy. The final episode transforms everything Robert has learned into a citywide test. Emergencies spread across Los Angeles. The Z-Team and the wider superhero dispatch network must respond to multiple threats, while Shroud directs the Red Ring toward the Torrance call center. The dispatch system becomes the battlefield. Robert's decisions determine whether teams arrive in time, whether resources are used effectively, and whether the people under his command can protect the city. At the beginning of the season, Robert saw dispatching as a lesser form of heroism. Now lives depend on it. The Z-Team fights together with a level of coordination that would have been impossible during Robert's first shift. They are still imperfect. They still argue. But they understand one another. And they understand Robert. The Phoenix program has not erased their past. It has given them a future worth defending. Shroud's forces attack SDN directly. During the chaos, Royd captures Invisigal and recovers the Astral Pulse. The missing heart of the Mecha Man armor is finally returned. Robert can become Mecha Man again. This should be the triumphant restoration he wanted from the beginning. The armor is repaired. The power source is installed. The symbol returns, but Robert is no longer the same man who lost it. The suit is now one tool among many. It is not his entire identity. Blonde Blazer also makes an extraordinary sacrifice. She gives her power-granting amulet to Chase. The energy restores him enough to rejoin the fight, allowing the former speedster to act once more when the city needs him. The decision temporarily gives up the thing that makes Mandy superhuman. Like Robert, she proves that heroism exists before the power, not because of it. Robert, Chase, the Z-Team, and the remaining heroes fight through the Red Ring assault. The battle eventually narrows to Robert and Shroud. Shroud takes Robert's dog, Beef, hostage. The move is cruel and effective. It forces Robert to surrender, placing him once again in a position where technology and strength cannot guarantee victory. The final outcome depends heavily on Robert's relationship with Invisigal. The first major outcome is Invisigal's heroic ending. If Robert has consistently supported Invisigal, performed well as a mentor, and demonstrated enough trust across the season, she chooses to protect him. When Shroud attempts to kill Robert, Invisigal takes the bullet. This act completes her transformation. At the beginning of the story, she planted the bomb that destroyed Robert's armor. At the end, she places her own body between Robert and death. The symmetry is deliberate. Her redemption is not proven by a speech, it is proven by a sacrifice. Robert attacks Shroud and beats him into submission. The player must then decide whether to kill him or spare him. If Robert spares Shroud, he refuses to let revenge define the final moment. Shroud is defeated, the Red Ring collapses, and Robert ends the cycle without becoming an executioner. If Robert kills Shroud, the outcome is darker. Robert finally avenges his father, but the decision creates consequences. He may face suspension and investigation, even if the people closest to him understand why he did it. Invisigal survives and is welcomed back into the Z-Team. Her return does not erase the bomb, the lies, or the damage she caused. It shows that redemption can remain real even when the past remains true. The alternative outcome is Invisigal's villain ending. If Robert repeatedly rejects Invisigal, fails to mentor her effectively, or performs poorly enough that she never develops faith in the heroic path, the final scene changes. Instead of sacrificing herself for Robert as a member of the team, Invisigal kills Shroud and takes his mask. She abandons Robert and the Z-Team. This ending is not simply the revelation that she was secretly evil. It is the result of a failed transformation. Invisigal began the story believing that people would always see her as a villain. If Robert and the Phoenix program reinforce that belief, she eventually accepts the identity they expect from her. Taking Shroud's mask symbolically places her inside the role of the person who once controlled her. The cycle continues. Robert defeats the Red Ring, but loses the person he might have helped save. The former teammate who was removed from the program also receives a final outcome. The person Robert removed earlier also receives a final outcome. Depending on the player's choices, the former teammate may be forgiven or sent to prison for helping Shroud. Forgiveness does not remove responsibility. It reflects Robert's understanding that rejection played a role in the betrayal, even though it did not excuse it. Sending the person to prison emphasizes accountability and the severity of helping the Red Ring attack the city. Like many decisions in Dispatch, neither outcome exists in isolation. The meaning depends on the version of Robert created across the season. Robert's romantic future can develop in several directions. The first possible romance is with Blonde Blazer. A romance with Mandy, or Blonde Blazer, grows from professional respect and shared responsibility. She recruits Robert when he is lost to everything. Over time, she watches him become more capable, not as Mecha Man, but as a leader. Robert also learns to see beyond her corporate confidence. Mandy is powerful, but her power does not remove uncertainty. She carries expectations from SDN, the public, and her own history with Mecha Man. Their relationship represents stability and partnership. It also creates complications because Mandy is Robert's manager. The story must navigate the imbalance between professional authority and personal connection. If the route develops successfully, Robert ends the season with someone who understands both sides of the heroic world, the public symbol and the exhausted person behind it. The second possible romance is with Invisigal. A romance with Invisigal is more volatile. Their connection begins through conflict. She challenges Robert, mocks him, disobeys him, and repeatedly tests whether his support has limits. Robert's attraction to her develops alongside his role as mentor, which makes the relationship ethically and emotionally complicated. Invisigal wants to be seen as more than her worst decision, but she also fears that intimacy will expose her to rejection. Her aggression often becomes a defense against vulnerability. If Robert supports her without simply excusing everything, the relationship can become part of her heroic transformation. The strongest version of the route is not about Robert saving her through romance. It is about Robert creating enough trust for Invisigal to choose a different life herself. Robert can also finish the season without choosing either relationship. Robert can also finish the season without committing to either relationship. This route allows the story to focus more directly on his identity, leadership, and connection to the team. It reinforces the idea that Robert's recovery does not require romance. He can rebuild his life through purpose, friendship, and responsibility. The ending also depends on Robert's performance as a dispatcher. One of the most interesting elements of Dispatch is that the final outcome is not determined only by dramatic dialogue choices. The game also considers Robert's performance during dispatch missions. This means leadership is evaluated through action. Robert cannot simply tell Invisigal that he believes in her while repeatedly sending the wrong people into danger, failing emergencies, and mismanaging the team. Trust must be supported by competence. The Hidden Mentor system measures a broader pattern across the season. Successful dispatch decisions, key interactions, relationship development, and moments of support all contribute to whether Invisigal remains committed to heroism. Some players initially believed the heroic ending was inconsistent or glitched because the system is not fully visible. In reality, the game connects the management mechanics to the narrative more deeply than it first appears. Robert's job matters. Robert's story ultimately has a meaning that reaches far beyond the repaired armor. At the beginning of Dispatch, Robert believes he needs the Mecha Man suit to become himself again. By the end, he has recovered it. But that recovery is no longer the point. The suit could not teach the Z-Team to trust one another, decide who deserved another chance, guide Invisigal through enemy territory, or turn a group of former villains into a team capable of protecting Los Angeles. Robert accomplished those things from a chair. His greatest power becomes the ability to understand people who are difficult to understand. That does not mean he always chooses correctly. He can fire the wrong person, fail emergencies, damage relationships, and reject someone who needed trust or support someone who later betrays him. Leadership does not give Robert the certainty that the armor once appeared to provide. It gives him responsibility without certainty. That is what makes it heroic. Invisigal's story expresses the central question of the game even more directly. Invisigal is the clearest expression of the game's central question. Can a villain change? Dispatch refuses to answer with a simple yes. Invisigal can change. She can also fail. The difference is influenced by her own choices, Robert's influence, the team's treatment of her, and whether the Phoenix program becomes a genuine opportunity rather than another institution waiting for her to disappoint it. Her heroic ending does not claim that trust automatically fixes everyone. Her villain ending does not claim that people never change. Together, the endings argue that redemption is a possibility requiring effort from both the person seeking it and the community asking them to become better. To understand why Robert's transformation matters, it helps to look more closely at the Z-Team. To understand why Robert's transformation matters, it helps to look more closely at the team placed under his command. The Z-Team is not simply a collection of strange powers designed to create comedy. Each member represents a different problem inside the idea of rehabilitation. Some are genuinely trying to change. Some want the benefits of the program without accepting its discipline. Some use humor to avoid responsibility. Some have spent so long being treated as dangerous that they no longer know how to behave when someone offers trust. Their abilities are also tied closely to their personalities. In dispatch missions, Robert cannot treat any hero as interchangeable. A person who can solve one emergency immediately may be almost useless in another. Personality traits can strengthen a mission or make a theoretically perfect assignment collapse. This forces Robert to know more than the team's power ratings. He must understand temperament. A hero who is strong but impulsive may need a calmer partner. A stealth specialist may be ideal for infiltration, but vulnerable in a prolonged confrontation. A team member who performs badly alone may become highly effective beside someone they trust. This is why the management system becomes part of the story rather than a distraction from it. Every dispatch is a small leadership decision. Robert studies patterns, takes risks, and learns which people bring out the best or worst in one another. When the team finally operates effectively during the Red Ring assault, the improvement feels earned because the player has spent the season creating those combinations. The Z team also changes Robert's understanding of heroism. Before SDN, he viewed heroes primarily through action. A hero arrived, fought the threat, and won. The Z team shows him everything that happens before that visible victory. Someone must interpret incomplete information. Someone must decide who is ready. Someone must recognize when a hero is exhausted, angry, frightened, or likely to make a reckless decision. Someone must accept responsibility when the call goes wrong. Robert once believed that the person inside the suit carried the entire burden. Now he sees the invisible network surrounding every heroic act. The decision to fire sonar or coupe matters because it permanently changes another person's future. The choice between sonar and coupe is important because it is the first moment when Robert's authority permanently changes another person's future. Until this point, many of his decisions can be corrected. A failed dispatch creates consequences, but the next call provides another opportunity. A harsh conversation can sometimes be repaired. Firing someone is different. Robert is told that the Z team needs a warning. This framing encourages him to use one person as an example for everyone else. It is a familiar management strategy, but it becomes morally uncomfortable when applied to people whose entire chance at reform depends on remaining in the program. Sonar and coupe do not simply lose a salary. They lose structure, protection, and public legitimacy. The player may choose based on mission performance, personal preference, team chemistry, or a belief that one of them is less committed to reform. Whatever the reason, the rejected member leaves with a powerful grievance. This later allows Shroud to exploit them. Shroud understands resentment. He knows how to approach someone who feels humiliated and offer a new interpretation of what happened. According to SDN, the person failed the Phoenix program. According to Shroud, the Phoenix program failed them. That difference is enough to turn disappointment into betrayal. The story does not remove responsibility from the former teammate. Helping kidnap Robert and supporting the Red Ring remain serious choices. However, Dispatch asks the player to consider how institutions sometimes create the failures they later use as evidence that rehabilitation was impossible. Robert's final decision about forgiveness or imprisonment, therefore, reflects what he learned. If he forgives, he recognizes the role his own decision played without denying the betrayal. If he chooses prison, he emphasized that understanding a person's motive does not eliminate accountability. Waterboy and Phenomaman represent two very different futures for the team. The replacement decision in Episode 4 looks like a practical team-building choice. It is also a statement about what Robert believes makes someone valuable. Waterboy is easy to overlook. He works near heroes without being treated like one. His position inside SDN allows him to see the organization from below, where heroic branding and corporate prestige look very different. Selecting him communicates that the Z team can create new identities rather than merely rehabilitate old ones. It gives a chance to someone who has not already been celebrated. Phenomaman represents the opposite approach. He arrives with status, power, and recognition. Adding him can immediately improve the team's raw capabilities. He understands public hero work and does not need the same basic opportunity Waterboy requires. But his presence risks turning the Z team into another stage for an established celebrity. He also brings his history with Blonde Blazer into the office. Robert may feel threatened by him professionally, romantically, or symbolically. Phenomaman resembles the kind of hero Robert once believed he needed to be. Powerful, visible, certain. The replacement decision, therefore, reveals whether Robert wants to strengthen the Z team by importing an accepted hero or by developing another outsider. Both choices can work. That is important. Dispatch rarely presents leadership as finding one objectively correct personality. It asks what kind of culture Robert wants to create, and whether he can manage the consequences of that choice. Robert's relationship with Chase also reveals the cost of heroic obsession. Chase is one of the most important people in Robert's life because he understands the cost of heroic obsession. As Trek star, Chase could move at superhuman speed. The power allowed him to save people, fight criminals, and become part of the heroic world. It also consumed his youth. His body paid for every impossible movement until he appeared far older than his actual age. Chase's condition challenges the fantasy that power automatically improves a life. Robert envies people born with abilities, yet Chase shows that a power can become another kind of prison. Both men are living after the apparent end of their heroic careers. Robert lost the armor. Chase lost the body capable of safely using his speed. Their reactions are different. Robert remains fixated on returning. Chase has learned to live inside the aftermath, though he has not fully made peace with it. This is why his final return to action is so meaningful. When Blonde Blazer gives him the amulet, Chase receives another opportunity to help. The moment is triumphant, but it is also dangerous. The story never allows the audience to forget that heroism has already taken years from him. His rescue of Invisigal is equally important. Chase openly doubts her. He criticizes her past and contributes to the pressure that pushes her toward the reckless Astral Pulse mission. Then, when she is in danger, he uses the power that damaged him to save her. He does not need to forgive everything before acting heroically. He simply refuses to let his judgment become an excuse for allowing another person to die. Royd represents the technical side of Robert's hope. When Robert joins SDN, repairing the Mecha Man suit is the practical reason he accepts the job. Royd helps transform that promise from vague corporate encouragement into a real project. Together, they rebuild systems, replace damaged components, and gradually restore the armor. However, Royd cannot solve the Astral Pulse problem through ordinary engineering. This limitation matters because it prevents Robert's recovery from becoming a simple montage of technical progress. The armor can be almost complete and still remain useless without its unique core. Robert's emotional recovery works in a similar way. He can repair routines, income, and professional purpose, but he cannot return to his old life without confronting the grief and revenge at its center. Royd also becomes essential during the final assault. Recovering the Astral Pulse allows Robert to re-enter the battle as Mecha Man. But by then, the restoration is a team achievement. The suit belongs to Robert's family legacy. Its return belongs to everyone who helped him survive long enough to use it again. Blonde Blazer represents the heroic ideal operating from inside the company. Mandy initially appears to represent the successful side of the superhero system. She is powerful, respected, and comfortable inside SDN. Robert meets her at his lowest point, which gives her immediate influence over the direction of his life. She offers the job, the resources, and the possibility of repairing his armor. It would be easy for the story to use her only as a perfect mentor or corporate obstacle. Instead, Mandy exists between those roles. She believes in SDN, but she also understands its limitations. She supports the Phoenix program, yet she is still responsible for performance. She cares about the Z team, but she asks Robert to remove someone to force improvement. She is a hero, but she also operates as a manager inside a business that packages heroism as a service. This tension defines her. Mandy cannot solve every problem by being kind. She cannot ignore failed missions, public risk, or company expectations. At the same time, she is not emotionally detached. Her interest in Robert grows because she sees him adapting. He begins the job as a wounded former hero using SDN for access to repairs. Over time, he becomes someone who protects the team in ways that have nothing to do with armor. Her final sacrifice with the amulet proves that her identity also extends beyond power. The amulet grants the abilities that make Blonde Blazer famous. Giving it to Chase temporarily makes her physically ordinary. She chooses to do it anyway. In that moment, Mandy and Robert arrive at the same truth from opposite directions. Robert learns he can be heroic without power. Mandy proves she is willing to surrender power in order to help. Invisigal is difficult to trust, which is exactly why her redemption feels meaningful. Courtney is difficult to trust because she is written to make trust feel risky. She lies. She disobeys orders. She acts impulsively. She hides the truth about the bomb. Even when she wants to do the right thing, she often chooses the most dangerous method available. Her behavior prevents her redemption from becoming sentimental. Robert is not asked to believe in an obviously innocent person whom everyone has misunderstood. He is asked to decide whether someone who genuinely caused harm can still become different. The asthma connected to her invisibility provides a useful metaphor for her personality. To use her power, Courtney must hold her breath. She disappears by refusing herself air. Emotionally, she behaves in a similar way. She hides when vulnerability becomes overwhelming. She suppresses fear until the pressure forces an impulsive reaction. Robert's role is not to remove every consequence. It is to create enough stability for her to stop treating every relationship like an approaching attack. When Courtney retrieves the Astral Pulse before Shroud can take it, she makes a genuinely heroic choice. She does not receive immediate credit. Most of the team believes the mission was a disaster. Chase is hospitalized, Courtney is blamed, and the power source appears lost. Her best action is hidden beneath the consequences of her worst decision. This is one reason her confession about the bomb becomes so devastating. She is finally trying to tell the truth at the moment when truth is most likely to destroy the progress she made. The player's response does not merely select a romance scene. It helps define whether Courtney believes honesty can lead to accountability and continued connection, or whether honesty only confirms that she should have remained hidden. The bomb and the Astral Pulse connected the two opposite sides of Invisigal's story. The two most important objects in the story are connected directly to Invisigal. She plants the bomb that destroys the armor. Later, she hides the Astral Pulse from Shroud. The first act takes Robert's power away. The second preserves the possibility of returning it. This does not create a simple balance where one good action cancels one terrible action. The damage from the bomb remains real. Robert's debt, retirement, humiliation, and physical danger all came from Courtney's choice. But the Astral Pulse proves she is no longer making choices for the same reasons. A person cannot change the past. They can change what they do when a similar decision appears again. Courtney once obeyed Shroud and attacked Robert. Later, she deceives Shroud and protects the source of Robert's power. Her heroic ending extends the same pattern. She once placed an explosive on his body. Finally, she places her own body in front of a bullet meant for him. Shroud controls Robert through more than physical force, because he also controls the memory of the past. Shroud's power over Robert is not limited to combat. He controls Robert through memory. Every time Robert thinks about his father, Shroud is present. Every attempt to repair the suit becomes part of the pursuit. Every failure feels like another victory for the man Robert hates. Shroud, therefore, benefits from Robert's inability to imagine a future outside revenge. Destroying the armor is not only a tactical victory. It forces Robert into a crisis of identity. If Mecha Man disappears, Robert may no longer know who is supposed to defeat Shroud. The villain also understands how to recruit wounded people. The Red Ring offers belonging through resentment. Former villains, rejected program members, and people who believe the heroic system will never accept them become easier to manipulate. Shroud does not create all their pain. He gives that pain a target. His treatment of Invisigal follows the same pattern. He uses her abilities, expects loyalty, and treats her as disposable. The Phoenix program offers an alternative, but only if Robert and the team make that alternative believable. During the final confrontation, Shroud takes Beef hostage because he understands that Robert's emotional attachments are more useful than any weakness in the armor. The act forces Robert to choose surrender. It also creates the moment when Invisigal's final path becomes visible. Shroud believes relationships make Robert vulnerable. The heroic ending proves that relationships are the reason Robert survives. Robert's final choice presents two different forms of justice. The choice to kill or spare Shroud is not presented as a simple measurement of whether Robert is good or evil. Robert has legitimate reasons to want him dead. Shroud killed his father, destroyed the armor, tortured him, attacked the city, manipulated his team, and threatened Beef. Sparing him requires Robert to reject the revenge that motivated much of his life. Killing him fulfills that revenge, but risks allowing Shroud to determine Robert's final moral boundary. The consequences emphasize that heroism exists inside a legal and social system. Even after everything Shroud did, Robert may face investigation for killing a defeated enemy. His friends can understand the choice without declaring it consequence-free. The more hopeful ending is generally the one in which Robert spares him, because it demonstrates that Robert's life no longer revolves around the death of his father's killer. However, the darker ending remains emotionally understandable. Dispatch allows the player to recognize why revenge feels satisfying, while still showing the cost of carrying it to completion. The romantic paths also change the way Robert experiences his recovery. The two main romantic paths are not isolated rewards added to the end of the season. They alter how Robert experiences his recovery. With Mandy, the relationship grows through shared competence. Both understand responsibility. Both are tied to heroic legacies and professional expectations. Their attraction develops as Robert becomes more secure inside SDN. This route often feels like Robert building a stable adult life after the collapse of his old identity. With Courtney, the relationship grows through emotional risk. Robert must decide whether trust is possible after repeated disappointment. Courtney must decide whether she can reveal the parts of herself most likely to be rejected. This route places redemption and intimacy inside the same conflict. It can be powerful, but it can also become unhealthy if Robert confuses affection with removing accountability. The best version of the relationship requires boundaries. Robert can care about Courtney while still recognizing that she made dangerous choices. Courtney can love Robert without making him responsible for every decision she makes. The non-romantic route has its own significance. Robert does not need a relationship to validate his transformation. Choosing neither person allows him to focus on the team and on the new identity he has created. Dispatch is not really about discovering one perfect path. Like many choice-driven games, Dispatch encourages players to compare outcomes. Which team member should be fired? Who is the better replacement? Which romance is more satisfying? Should Shroud be killed? What combination produces the best ending? Those questions are natural, but they can obscure what makes the story effective. There is no version of Robert's season without damage. The armor is destroyed. Someone is removed from the team. Chase collapses. Courtney's betrayal is revealed. The Red Ring attacks the city. The purpose of the choices is not to create a reality where nothing painful happens. The choices determine what Robert does with pain after it arrives. Does rejection become permanent condemnation? Does failure remove the possibility of trust? Does revenge become the only meaningful conclusion? Does power define the hero? The best ending is not perfect because everyone forgets the past. It is hopeful because the characters carry the past without allowing it to make every future decision for them. The Phoenix program gives the game's central idea a fitting name. The name of the Rehabilitation Initiative is carefully chosen. A phoenix is reborn through destruction. The image is dramatic, but Dispatch explores how uncomfortable rebirth actually is. The former villains do not emerge from the program clean and immediately heroic. They bring their habits, rivalries, insecurities, and criminal histories with them. SDN also brings its own flaws. The company measures performance, protects its reputation, and sometimes treats people as replaceable. The Phoenix program exists between genuine idealism and corporate necessity. Robert becomes essential because he can translate between those worlds. He understands the desire to be a hero. He also understands failure. He knows what it means to lose the identity that made life meaningful. This gives him a connection to the Z-Team that a perfect corporate hero might never develop. Robert does not arrive as a fully formed mentor. He becomes one because the team forces him to confront his own dependence on second chances. By the end of the story, the Z-Team has become something very different from the group Robert first inherited. Regardless of several branching choices, the Red Ring Assault proves that the Z-Team has changed. At the beginning, they are treated as the weakest and least reliable group in the building. By the end, they stand against a coordinated attack on Los Angeles. Their victory does not mean every member has become morally flawless. It means they choose to protect people when the choice is most difficult. The city sees heroes. As Juan T. Piri does SDS. City sees a successful program. Robert sees the individuals who argued with him, ignored him, disappointed him, and eventually trusted him enough to follow his direction into a war. The damaged Torrance branch can be repaired. The team's reputation can improve, but the most important change is internal. The Z-Team no longer needs heroism to be something assigned by a corporate program. They have performed it for themselves. In the end, Dispatch presents a world filled with powers, costumes, corporate heroes, former villains, and citywide battles. Dispatch presents a world filled with powers, costumes, corporate heroes, former villains, and citywide battles. Yet its most important moments happen in offices, bars, hospital rooms, and conversations between people who do not know how to trust each other. Robert begins as a man trying to return to the past. He wants the suit, he wants revenge, and he wants to become the version of Mecha Man that existed before the explosion. Instead, he becomes something new. He becomes a dispatcher, a leader, and the person responsible for giving others the chance he thought he had lost. The final battle proves that the Mecha Man armor still matters. The Astral Pulse still matters. Robert's family legacy still matters. But none of those things are enough by themselves. A machine can make Robert stronger, but only his choices can make him a hero. And depending on those choices, the same is true for everyone he leads.